Welcome back to Checkmate with Blake. Today we have another opening video for you all. We're going to be talking about the Berlin defense, which is a counter to the Ruy Lopez. If you're not familiar with the Ruy Lopez, it's a very solid opening for white that gives a very solid position. Many grandmasters choose this for this reason. Also, if you watch any world championships, you'll often notice the Ruy Lopez is played very frequently. However, the Berlin defense is an excellent counter to the Ruy Lopez, and it's often considered to be one of the most solid chess openings for black. So without any further ado, we'll go ahead and get into this video. I do want to say if you guys want to see any specific content, feel free to leave some comments. I'll make videos on that stuff for you guys. We have gained some subs over the last few days. Thank you all so much for your support. All right, we'll go ahead and jump into this video. The Ruy Lopez has started with these moves here. These very typical moves. And now after this bishop comes out, this is the Ruy Lopez. You may wonder if you're a beginner, so I'm going to briefly touch on this, why you would play the Ruy Lopez, but it's simply because you're adding pressure to this pawn and you're threatening to remove the defender. However, I want to point out a quick trap. This will be the first little bit of the video. If they were to, let's say we play the move a6, which is very common. It's not the Berlin, but let's just say they play. Actually, for the sake of the video, we can play the Berlin. If they take this pawn or take this knight now and you recapture, if they think they can win a free pawn, you actually have this move queen d4, which now threatens check and threatens the knight. And after the knight runs back, you give this check and you simply trade down. Notice now white can't castle. So that's just a quick tip that you should know, especially if you're a beginner. You may not know that. But we'll go ahead and get started with the Berlin. There's a few lines I want to play here. I'm going to start with the most complicated one. So again, if you're a beginner and you have questions on it, feel free to leave some comments and I'll try to answer those. But if white decides to castle in this position rather than trying to trade down and of course win this because they know the tactic doesn't work, well, here you enter what's called the Berlin Endgame, which is one of the most theoretical positions. It's been played it's been played quite a bit, and it's actually designed really to give black a draw. And so if you're playing a stronger opponent, and you want to kind of gain your elo and you want for a draw, you can kind of go into this line, which is the Berlin endgame. So in this position, you actually capture the pawn. The move here that's pretty much played the most often is actually d4. You can consider some other lines. You can look at the lines rook e1, but d4 is the Berlin endgame, which often was what white's going to enter in this position. Now you go back. Notice this bishop is undefended, so after they go ahead and exchange it down, you take with the d pawn. After they take with this pawn, you go here. Now, of course, they're going to go ahead and trade queens, and you may look at this position and say, why in the world would I play this for black? Well, if you're a beginner and you don't really understand why you would try to make yourself not castle, well, the reason being is, first of all, notice, ideally, they like to put this rook on this square and this rook on this square. Notice now, if they give this check, you go king e8, and now they're going to actually lose a tempo because they're going to have to develop these pieces, and then develop these pieces and then move the rook over and then move this rook over to actually get the rooks in the ideal positioning. So a more correct move in this position is actually the move h3, which is a more modern way to play. It's a very aggressive way to play. However, again, I recommend this because pretty much any line they play, even if they give this check, again, you're going to go king e8. So it's very simple. You have an edge because king e8 is almost automatic. So after this move h3, you have a lot of options. Notice again, the engine still loves the move king e8. King e8 is pretty much an automatic move. However, here there's a move I recommend, which is actually the move h5. h6 is supposedly the best move, but h5 serves a very specific purpose because now let's say they see that they have this kind of idea. First of all, you always know that you're just going to go king e8. But let's say they just develop and go knight c3, which is the best move. You go ahead and develop your bishop, and now let's say that they actually wants bishop e7, to be quite honest with you. But after you develop your bishop, either way, you're going to develop your bishop here at some point. This is where you want your bishop to be. They're going to try this line knight g5. And what you're going to do here is you're actually going to play rook h6. Again, there's other lines. The engine prefers king e7. That's also very reasonable. But the idea behind this rook move is very practical, and it's very easy to play. The idea being is if they ever capture, you're going to take and you're going to have a rook in the center, and your development is much easier now because now if you go king e8, you get your rook in. Your rooks are on open files. Well, other than this one, but they're on ideal files, that's for certain. For example, if they were to try and play rook e1, which is obviously not a great move, first of all, you do have this move king e8. You always have this move king e8. But you could always even consider just playing the move f6 in some of these kind of positions, which is a tactic maybe you should just know or a position that you need to just kind of understand. Also notice this this square is very weak, so if you were to jump here, you could threaten some ideas here. Obviously, these exact positions, it may not work, but just some concepts you have for attacking. So I won't go super in depth with the Berlin endgame because again, it's very theoretical. If you want to learn more, I could post an entire video just on the Berlin endgame. So I won't spend too much time on it because it's a very, very deep line. It's a lot of drawish kind of positions. So if white knows the Berlin endgame, and they don't want to go down it. They're fighting for a win. They may consider the move d3. However, here what I recommend is bishop c5, just kind of looking at this pawn. Obviously setting up some kind of tactics too. So now if they try and go ahead and trade down, obviously I showed earlier, well, maybe they think now they can take this pawn, right? Because now this is defended by d3. So now they don't have, after this move, for example, I'm not going to be able to capture this pawn with check. But now after this move, it's actually even worse, because here we go there threatening checkmate. Obviously, they cannot defend both pieces. If they just bring their knight back, well, we're just going to checkmate them. The best move is queen f3, and we just win up a whole piece. So obviously, we're up 3 in the opening. We're completely crushing. There are a ton of lines that you can study here too. For example, the move c3 is a very common move you might find, so I want to go ahead and briefly talk about it. The move I recommend is d5, and after they take, you just have a very strong position here. So obviously, that's just something to point out. d5 is the move you have to know in that position. So let's go back. Let's say now after this position, they go ahead and trade this piece. And they're not going to take this, but they're going to castle, which is very reasonable. The move bishop g4 makes a whole lot of sense here. Also does the move queen e7. So queen e7 and bishop g4 are the two moves I consider. Queen e7 is actually what I'd recommend in this position. Go ahead and protect your pawn, prepare this move, and also you have the ideas of getting this rook to this file looking at the queen. The best move here is knight bd7. Now you play this move bishop g4, and you have a very solid game. If they try to push you away, well, you can simply go back. And again, you're going to play a very, very solid game. You can castle, bring your rooks on the open file. There's no issues. It's perfectly even. It's 0.0. The engine says 0.04. So pretty much a negligible advantage. So I'll look at some of the other lines I have for you guys. In this position now, let's say they castle here. You can actually play this move knight d4 here. So knight d4 is attacking this bishop. If they were to go back, first of all, you can always just capture. And again, now white's only up 0.01. So this is completely negligible. And of course, they really have to. If they trade down this way and then maybe try c3, well, you just go bishop b6. And you have, again, a very solid position. This is why they say the Berlin defense is one of the most solid openings for chess. Especially against the Ruy Lopez, because again, as you can see in all these lines, black pretty much equalizes. I mean, even in the Berlin Endgame, you're going for a draw. So if you're going to try and equalize, you're playing a stronger opponent, or if someone's just not prepared, because again, I showed you all some of the traps in this opening as well. I want to make sure I didn't miss anything I wanted to cover in this opening, just to make sure you guys are well prepared. No, I think those are most of the lines I wanted to cover. If I missed something, feel free to leave a comment, and I'll make a video on that and try and make sure I cover those well, because I want you guys to be prepared, and if I do miss something, I want to make sure that I can post a video on it. But the Berlin Endgame, as I showed, has a bunch of traps, but again, it's also very solid, so you can capture, an opponent you have that maybe lower rated or doesn't know the theory, but is playing the Ruy Lopez because they know it's a very solid opening. You can likely catch them in some of these traps, and even if they play perfectly, as shown by the engine here, you're going to have a pretty much balanced game, and you definitely have drawing chances too if you are playing a stronger opponent. So the Berlin defense is actually the opening I play personally against the Ruy Lopez, which is why I recommend it. If you don't prefer slow openings like this and solid, and you want to play more of a dynamic, more of like a tactical game with imbalances, check out my ready masterclass video if you're looking for something for white. That's actually the opening I recommend. I'll go ahead and attach a card to it or a link to it on the screen, so you can go ahead and watch it if you're interested. But thank you guys for tuning in. Let me know what kind of content you guys would like to see next. Thank you all.